Good evening and welcome to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review. I am DM Bluddworth, and as you can see by the graphics, today's video, which will be posted on Thursday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, is a Session 5 recap of my AD&D First Edition Greyhawk campaign. As you can see, I changed the graphic a little bit here, identifying the actual adventure that the player characters are going through. So they're currently going through B1 In Search of the Unknown by Mike Carr. And that's something that I'll continue doing for the rest of this, long series of campaign recaps. So last Monday night, which was actually just yesterday, we ran a full session from 7 p.m. to 10:30-ish p.m. Eastern Time, and 8 of our 9 members were able to show up and fully participated. Some of these were new players just last week, so they've made their second appearance and really worked out well. When we wrapped up this session, pretty much the consensus was that this was their favorite session, and there were a number of players who were there for all 5, and then the new players they really had a good time with this session. It was very challenging at points, and I'm going to kind of rehash and go over it once I switch screens and show you the map and who was actually present. But before I actually do that, I just want to show you some of the things that I've been doing for as a dungeon master. Some of the things that I found makes it pretty easier to handle such a large group, and then to do these recaps as well. So as you can see, my setup here is we're playing online, and using Discord and Roll20. In basically 2 different ways. The Discord is simply just for the voice, and that way we can chat and everyone can hear very clearly. And then the Discord, I've been using it for mapping out, and so that way they have a visual reference of what they're actually encountering and such, and doing the dice rolls on Discord. And then maintaining the overall character roster. And so that's what I'm going to show you first, is something that I do on Discord, is that I produce one of these sheets, and you'll see the graphic that is on there. So this is an actual page on Discord. I'm sorry, on Roll20. And so I have all of the characters, and usually they're listed in alphabetical order. That way I can just kind of tell who's there or whatever. But sometimes I put these in the order, their marching order, or whatever order they're actually going to fall into. This here is pretty much just alphabetical for the most part. I switched a few around. So for this Session 5, we had Innes, the Human Fighter, played by Jean. We had Angus, the Human Ranger, played by Kelly. We had Breeze, the Elf Cleric, played by Empty Inside. We had Cedric, the Human Magic User, played by Ivan. We had Sparrow, the Half-Elf Druid, played by Leah, or Lee. I actually have to double check with her and see which, how she says it. I think Lee. Crandon, the Halfling Thief, played by Vince. Amalric, the Gray Elf Fighter Magic User, played by Blaine. And Mirador, the Human Cleric, played by Mirador. So these are the 8 players. The Paladin wasn't able to make it. He's busy moving or getting ready to sell his home, so he wasn't able to make it. And it was a very successful session. So as I said, so this is one thing that I keep track on Roll20. That way I have their stats, and we can very quickly modify what's going on. So we're mapping along as we go, right? So as the players are mapping out, we're mapping out on the screen. I also have the physical map of In Search of the Unknown, and I use just a highlighter to mark off where they've actually kind of looked down the hallways or where they've actually traveled. And then later on, I come back and I do a little cut, physically cutting with a scissor, and then I just reprint it out, and then I put the X's on to get the, where they actually had either major events or combat. During play, I actually have a note sheet here. So you can see quite a lot going on, and that's what I'm going to go over during the recap, is just to try to explain the action that went along and then the final outcomes. So let me switch views here. So you basically see all of that here on this screen. Search of the Unknown by Mike Carr. So I always keep on displaying the actual adventure that the players are going through. So this is their 5th session in this particular dungeon. Those are the player characters that were in this particular session, and then there's basically the overall map. So this is from sessions 1 through 5, and they did a bit of backtracking here. So if you remember back in session 4, they were up here in room 13 at the very top, that first red X. Now, they had a combat when they first got into that room. They decided that they were going to rest up because they had spent about 8 hours inside the dungeon at that point. And so they spiked the doors, and then they started going through a process. Now, we did a little bit of role-playing at that point because some of the new players that came in, we had 4 new players come into the, into the sessions with us in session 4. And so they felt that they wanted to introduce their characters to the rest of the player character party and get a sense. And since they were preparing to sleep through the night, and there was technically 9 of them present, they were only going to have to take 1 hour shifts of guard duty while the rest of the party slept. And so there was about an hour before they'd start that watch, and then they were anticipating an hour afterwards. And while they were conversing with each other and getting to know each other, other characters rotating out in their sleeping patterns, they divvied up who was going to take the first watch through the 8th watch. And then I did the checks. Now I had planned this whole time to have an attack take place while they were sleeping. I just had to determine when during the 8 hours of resting time would that take place, and it happened to occur in the 7th hour of their resting. Now, the reason why this planned attack occurred, which I informed them afterwards, was because they made the mistake of when they first killed the orcs in room 13, they made the mistake of carrying the bodies out of that room and stashing them in this little alcove down near the end. And since this was a one direction area, there was no exit out this other area. When the guards within the place started noticing these bodies that they're leaving around all over the place, they kind of started following the trail. And once they came to this corner over here, up in the north, you can kind of make it out. It's this little T-shaped right next to room 13. That one alcove on the western side is where they dumped the bodies. And so who discovered them in this room was an ogre and 4 very very competent and tough orcs. So the player characters were pretty much woken up by the ogre slamming its massive two-handed club, an iron shod club with spikes on it, smashing on the door. And it took them 2 rounds to actually break down the door, which unfortunately for him, it allowed everybody on the inside to be ready for it, particularly the ranger Angus. So here's Angus, a ranger, with his short bow at point blank range, just waiting for the first of the attackers to come in. And so as soon as the ogre does step into this room, having knocked down the door, Angus hit it with a critical hit, a natural 20, which did 20 hit points, maybe even more, 20 hit points of damage with that first shot. And then, since he always fires 2, his second arrow was going to hit the, which was like a 19 or something crazy like that as well. So he ended up doing, I believe, close to like 30 some odd points of damage to this, to this ogre, instantly killing the ogre. So the ogre goes down, and 3 of the 4 orcs were able to get into this room. Remember, I have been trying to impress upon the players that they have a fairly large group, and some of these halls and everything, even though they're 10-foot wide hallways, when you have large groups and people doing combat, and there's furniture in some of these places and such, that movement, I want them to get the sense that movement in a dungeon isn't, a casual walk. That there's times when, their sheer numbers are going to be a hindrance to being able to make attacks, or, to fire off, arrows without, or other missile weapons without running the risk of hitting, each other. I know quite a number of times our new magic user, Cedric, kept on looking for these opportunities to throw oil flasks, and he just wants to, keep on setting things on fire and everything. And the rest of the party had to keep on reminding him that, this is a closed-off dungeon. It doesn't have the best of ventilation, and, setting fires in it, might not be a very good idea. And they're already expecting that the complex is going to be on high alert now that they've been dropping all these bodies all over the place. So the combat takes place, and the orcs start swarming into the room, and the first person that got injured was Ennis, the human fighter, played by Gene, and he gets hit for 4 points of damage on the first hit. So he has 11 hit points, and he took 4 points of damage on the first hit. Then he took another hit during this combat, and this combat was lasting into the second, and then even the third round. At which point, when he took the second hit, which brought him down to about 4 hit points of 4 hit points total, that is when Mirador actually healed him up 8 points, at a point. And then no, I'm sorry, no, he didn't heal up him. Creighton, the thief, got hit as well during this combat, and he got dropped to 3 hit points. And that's when Mirador had healed up Creighton, because he was much more injured at that point than Innes the fighter was. Eventually, they started killing off, the party started killing off the orcs as well. Angus killed off 2 more orcs in the process, and at one point another orc was killed by the druid with her, I'm pretty sure she used her sling stone, and she killed one off. And then Breeze is the cleric, the elf cleric. He killed off one of the orcs, the one that actually had injured Crandon, the halfling thief. So at this point, now they've expended some of their magic in order to heal everybody. They weren't quite able to utilize their natural healing, because in combat they just weren't, just can't do that, especially in a confined space like they were in. And then the natural healing only works when on fresh damage that was done just the round prior to. So at that point, Mirador had to expend his healing spell in order to bring Crandon, the halfling thief, back up to maximum hit points. He healed him for 8 points, whereas he had only taken 3 hit points of damage. So he was back up at maximum. So once they started taking better stock of their situation up there in room 13, up at the very north part of the red X that you see, they started making plans to backtrack and cover some of the spots that they hadn't already investigated. Now, they had remembered that they had seen doors down here at the lower X that you see there. Previously, they had just seen the doors. They obviously didn't know what kind of room it went into. And so they moved on down there. They didn't hit any other random encounters along the way heading down to that portion. And then they followed their normal protocol of, checking the doors for traps, seeing if they're locked, and then they had entered in. Now, this room is the library, and so I described the space to them, and there were a total of 10 orcs in this room. 2 wearing robes, all right, one clear, like both clearly shaman. Both had their left eye gouged out, so they were both worshippers of Gruumsh. And then there were 8 other orcs. All of those orcs were the 1+1 variant of them, so much tougher orcs. Hit die much tougher than your standard orc. And as I might have mentioned, the shamans, one was a 4 hit die or 4th level shaman or cleric, and the other was a 2nd level cleric. So when the party first entered into this room, they took very quick stock of the situation, and the archers were going to go, or the missile combatants were going to act first and go towards the shamans, try to take the shamans out. And so the first shaman got hit with an arrow, and quickly brought him down to about 17 hit points. He started off with 24, so he came down to 17 hit points, and then the second shaman was actually wounded as well during this part. Cedric, the magic user, tried to put as many of the orcs to sleep with his sleep spell, and he managed to capture 4 of the orcs along with the main shaman. And when the main shaman didn't fall asleep, he kind of intuitively knew that that shaman was either above the hit die that he had remaining, because that's the way the sleep spell works. Is like you roll a number of hit dice. So he had rolled like 11 hit dice, but you put to sleep the lower hit die first as you're moving up and accumulating. So even if a creature has 3 hit die and not 4, so they are still susceptible, a 3rd hit die creature will be one of the last that you actually include in the total number of hit dice that he put to sleep. So, but he managed to put to sleep 4 of the orcs, and then the combat continued. The other 4 orcs that were present in the room, plus the shaman, then had their turn to move. So the shaman cast a silent spell over a majority of the room. So basically nullifying whatever the clerics and the magic users would be able to do. All right, so that was his action. And then the 4 orcs ended up attacking 4 party members. So the fighter, Ennis, Amalric, the magic user fighter, Mirador, and Breeze, the 2 clerics. So they all engaged in in melee combat, and this is where Innis took some more damage, the fighter. So he took another 4 hit points of damage, which brought him down to just 2 hit points left at this point. Almeric took 7 hit points of damage, which took him down to just 4 hit points. And basically, if he didn't have his familiar, he would have been brought to 0 on that. So the familiar is really what kept him alive. Mirador attempted to, or Mirador healed Ennis up a little bit. So he healed him up initially. I'm checking the notes and trying to see. At some point, the combat kept on going on, and we were into about the 4th round. And this is where the druid, she was going to try to take out the orc that was attacking Innis. Innis was in dire straits here, and so she said, I'm just going to go in there and try to get him. And she rolled a natural 1. So a critical miss. So trying to determine what exactly is going to happen, I wanted to leave that there was a chance that she would actually hit Ennis, which would have been really bad at that point, because he only had 2 hit points at that point. So I told her, we'll make another roll and let's see what happens. And she rolled another 1. So I was like, all right, so he's definitely getting hit. And he took the damage that brought him down to -1 hit points. So Innis goes down. All right, fortunately for him, he has a positive constitution bonus. And so I wasn't going to start the system shock checks that he'd have to make not to die instantly. And I wasn't going to start his bleeding and making those system shock checks until he reached -3 hit points. So he still had 1 more hit point that he could lose before I'd start doing those system shock checks. So the fighter goes down. He's unconscious and bleeding. that's when Breeze comes in, and he is going to cast a heal spell. So he delays his other action, actually ignores the fact that he is being attacked by an orc, and instead he just bears the brunt of the attack. He took damage from this orc. Meanwhile, he's trying to get over to Ennis in order to heal Ennis up. He heals Ennis up 6 points, bringing Ennis back up to 4 hit points, but he's still unconscious. You have to remember in first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, anytime that you go below 0, even if you're recovered by magic, you're still in like a catatonic state for 1 to 6 turns. So he was going to be unconscious for and in a catatonic state or a coma, let's say, for I believe it was 30 minutes. So a total of 3 turns. He was going to be completely, incapacitated. The party continues fighting. They start getting into that 5th round, and then they start realizing, hey, those 4 orcs that are asleep are going to start waking up. We better go finish them off. And so as they keep on whittling down the 4 orcs that were still fighting, they eventually get killed off, each one being killed by either a combination. A lot are killed by Angus. Angus is by far the most effective killer in the group, with his arrows and being a ranger and getting 3 attacks every 2 rounds. So he is really dishing out a lot of punishment when he's utilizing his bow. So they finally defeat the last of the orcs. They have no real issues with killing orcs that are sleeping, and basically they're orcs. They're inherently evil, and they just don't want to leave them behind. They're not here to take prisoners either. And then they start to search through the room. Now, the treasure that they pick up in this room is by far the most treasure that they've actually come across in 5 sessions. So to get a total of 3 scrolls, one of which was a 4-spell clerical scroll. One was a 3-spell user scroll, and the third was a 2-spell illusionist scroll. So they pick up 3 scrolls, and the great thing about the magic user, all 3 spells neither of the magic users actually had, and so they can work that out and divvy that up. They also came across a catch of 10 gems that were worth 200 gold pieces apiece, a locked and trapped chest that the thief very expertly disarmed the trap, and then unlocked the lock. And for a first level thief, those are well at. And within that chest, they had 1,500 gold pieces and 2 rings, collectively worth about 900 gold pieces. They found a magic ring, and I'm not going to say what that is until the until players actually go through session 6 when they're kind of wrapping up their first into Questcaton. They also find about 20 books they felt would be of value. And this is the decision process begins, right? They know that Innes the Fighter is going to need at least a week to recover from his first edition AD&D. Anytime you go into a negative range, even if you're brought in with healing spells, that doesn't mean that your natural healing is going to begin. Natural healing will not begin again, and you will not be, you'll still be fairly incapacitated. You will not be allowed to do any kind of stressful physical labor. You can't train, you can't, mentally train, you can't do anything virtually other than 1 week's worth of bed rest. Now, there are ways that you can reduce that amount of time, like his +2 Constitution would take off 2 days from that. So he would actually be ready to move forward in 5 days instead of 7, but they're still not going to be ready to return within 5 days anyway, because many of them are now at the point where they finally have enough experience points and gold. So that is going to be our next session. So they knew that they were going to depart from the from Queston, go back to either on the borderland, Kendall Keep, or move on and go back to Westburn, which is in Yeomanry. Go back to the first town that they started off in order to heal up, rest up, train up, and make attack. That's what the next session is going to be. It's going to be more RP, more storytelling, more discovery, learning certain things that they will learn from the books that they've taken out of this library, and and then just getting ready to either return to In Search of the Unknown or move on from there, because now at this point here, some of the hints or whatever they might get, some of the intelligence gathering, because I know some of the players have already said they want to ask around town and see if they can pick up any additional rumors or just rumors of anything else going on. So they will have some amount of freedom to either return back to Questcaton or move forward to go someplace else. So let me switch back because I'm pretty much done with the recap there. So as you can see, it was a really successful. Players had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun running it. One of the player characters almost died. So it is kind of a reminder to, I think, everybody, that was there, of how quickly things in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons First Edition, and some of the consequences of taking that kind of damage. An interesting thing as well. If you survive and you go to -6 or worse, -7, 8, or 9, the character could pick up some permanent injuries from that. -10, you are dead no matter what. And if Ennis had gone to -3, as I said, he would have to start making system shock rolls in order to survive each point lost after. So at -3, a roll. At -4, another roll. So it's good that they managed to put to sleep those 4 orcs, because this battle would have been dramatically different if the magic user did not have that sleep spell still handy. And so that would have almost certainly led to at least one player character dying if those 4 orcs were not dispatched as instantly as they were, and and the rest of the party would have had to deal with them. I really think that Ennis would have probably bled out in the time frame that battle had already taken. So once again, I hope you enjoyed this. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you hadn't subscribed, please consider subscribing. Hit the bell alert so that you'll know video comes up. I will continue to keep on doing these recaps. As I said in the previous video, now that I have some players who have gone through all 5 sessions, I'm going to do an addition, kind of like a player character spotlight about their character, and that's going to begin with session 6. And I will pick one of the characters that have been in all 5 sessions at this point, and that's something I'll continue so that everyone in a recap as we continue pushing further and further through season 1 of my AD&D first edition Greyhawk campaign. So again, thanks for joining, and look forward to seeing you on the gaming screen sometime soon. Stay safe out there, keep on gaming, and I'd love to see any playthroughs or any recaps that you happen to be doing with your old school games. I think that's something that many of us need to do a lot more often, and that is talk about the OSR, talk about how we're running games using some of these older systems, and and just keep on inviting people in to listen to the experiences of our players, or to do recaps as I'm doing here, and also to just run as many games as you can using these older systems. That's the true future of the OSR, is that we have to introduce new players to either the hobby, or new players to Dungeons and Dragons, or any game that you happen to be running, and to introduce new players to these older systems so that they can see that there's a reason why there's a cadre of DMs and players that are still running these old systems 30, 40 years later. And that's because it's not that we haven't moved on and played other systems. It's mostly, I think, the fact that we've returned to these older systems. Yes, partly due to nostalgia, but also due to the fact that it gives us a gameplay that that we still gravitate to. AD&D First Edition is uniquely AD&D First Edition. You really can't replicate it with a more modern game. They just don't match up or compare equally and in the same way. So if you're looking to have a true Dungeons and Dragons experience, and again, this is just my opinion, AD&D First Edition is the place to go in order to get that. So get off my soapbox now. Thanks for joining. Have a great evening. And as always, I look forward to seeing you out on the gaming screen sometime soon. Take care.